Shouldn't have said no. Where the fuck you think you're going?
Hello gamers, today we're going to do something that I am not looking forward to doing. And that is playing and talking about Mafia 3. If you couldn't have guessed it, the third installment in the Mafia series. And well, they definitely cooked on this one, but they left it a bit raw. And what do I mean by raw? Well, on release the game wasn't just a buggy mess, but it was also missing features that previous games had, like car races, car customization, and a bunch of other things. But the bugs were still an ever-present feature, much like any modern game. To the point where I played the game on release like the massive Mafia fan I was. But the game was just so bad that I got up to the point where you save Vito from someone, obviously the protagonist from 2, and I was like, okay, I have seen my guy, I got that little hit of nostalgia and happiness, and I never played the game again. But every so often I see like cutscene movies or just cutscenes of the game on TikTok, and I think to myself, the story actually sounds kinda cool. Especially the scenes with John Donovan, and well, these thoughts rattling around in the back of my head, and the upcoming release of Mafia the Old Country later this year, I thought it's finally time I sit down and check out Mafia 3 and see if it's better than I remember or the same awful mess of a game. And well, I'm just going to go do that now. If you couldn't tell by the part of this script I've written, I have not played the game yet. So let's go check it out and hope for the best. Let's just say it went almost exactly how I expected it to. The game was sluggish to get through. It took me like 30 hours to beat, which isn't long for some games, but for a Mafia game it's ridiculously long. And I tried to do as little as I had to do to finish the story, especially towards the end of the game, but I also really wanted to finish this game. The narrative of the game is amazing. I love Lincoln Clay as the main character. He isn't the best protagonist in the series, but I feel he might be the best written. Like, I think his motivations during the story is the most understandable of all the characters or previous protagonists. Is that a word? Protagonists? Protagonists? I don't know. But then, at the same time, revenge is something all humans can understand. And when someone kills your adopted father and his son, your adopted brother, and your best friend, and then also kills another one of your friends, well, I could understand the want to take revenge on them, not even adding the whole burning down your family home and business, and also shooting you point blank in the head, which also is a pretty cool thing to have happen to your main character. I mean, not cool, but how many games start off with you getting shot in the head and leaving a massive scar for the rest of the game? I can only think of one other one, and that's New Vegas. And that's pretty good company to have. And then the game's antagonist, Sal Marcano, the head of the Marcano crime family. Even though he is very much the bad guy, the game makes that very clear. You can also kind of understand his motives, because when you take away all of the violence and crime and racism that he does, he is just a man trying to get out from the criminal lifestyle. Or kind of, we'll talk on that later. But now, once again, he isn't doing that the best way, and you still kind of understand where he's coming from. Even when you learn that Sal never wanted his brother, son, or sisters to join a life of crime, failing to convince his brother especially to go and become a lawyer, even offering to pay for law school and take care of all his expenses. But at the end of the day, still a bad man. His crime family also having the advantage of being the only one in the city. That city being what I want to talk about next, the great city of New Bordeaux. Much like Mafia's worlds, it's a fictional city heavily inspired by a real-life city. The game taking its inspiration from New Orleans, which I have never been to before, and I know almost nothing about the city apart from like what they show in the originals, but it seems pretty good to me at least. The game takes place in the 60s. It also captures the divided state of the city pretty well. And they don't just do that by having everyone call Lincoln the N-word. Don't get me wrong, that happens a lot. But it also seen in all the buildings within the city, especially the richer area of the city, have like signs that say no coloured people allowed on the buildings. And also something I feel this game did incredibly well was adding the fact that cops' response times depend on what part of the city you are in. If you are in the Hollow, a much poorer coloured neighbourhood, the cops barely ever show up, with the dispatcher who takes the call about the crime sounding like she couldn't care less about what the person was telling her or getting units to that location. Compared to the much richer, whiter areas of town where the cops will be on your ass within seconds, making it very hard to lose them.
There's been a call about a hit and run in the Hollow. If any of y'all got the patience for it, feel free to swing by. All area units, please respond. Report of an altercation in the French ward. Suspect described as a Negro male.
Unless you go to said poorer areas. Also though, one thing about the police I don't like in this game, it sort of takes away, I thought it was like a really cool Mafia thing that they always did, but this game doesn't have it, is that you will not get pulled over for speeding. And also, at least I experienced, there was never a chance to get a ticket and pay your way out of it. It was just get shot or get arrested. But maybe that is accurate for a black man in the 60s. I have no idea, obviously. And the game pulls off that line between realistic racism for what it would have been like for Lincoln, which I do feel most games would have never touched. And if they did, it'd just be everyone calling him the N-word and no other sort of layered, like with the buildings and the police and all that. But so far, everything I have mentioned is stuff that I think is good about the game. But at the start, I sighed after playing it. So, what's bad about the game? And why did it get so much hate? Was it justified? Yes. Apart from the bad release, there are problems that still exist today, starting off with a thing that I didn't like about the game, but maybe others didn't mind it as much, like it's sort of low down on the totem pole of horribleness that is Mafia 3. That being the game's characterization of one Vito Scaletta. The Vito we got in this game just doesn't seem like the one we left off in Mafia 2. Now, of course, it's been like 20 years and a lot's happened to Vito, but he seems like the lessons he learned in Mafia 2 didn't happen. He still just seems to be that guy trying to strive to be a rich mafioso. Now, yes, due to being a made man, he can't just leave the life of crime, even if he wanted to. And it makes sense that he was moved out of New York or Empire Bay after killing the head of 2 crime families. But this video seems a lot more quicker to anger and a lot more of a classic mobster than I personally would have liked him to be. Now, yes, that is just what I would have expected. Like, if you don't assign him a territory, he gets extremely pissed off.
We ain't your private army sitting around waiting to lock shit down when you need us. We got expectations. Expectations that you are sadly falling short of. Shit didn't play out my way last time. I did everything you asked, and still, nothing. Eventually I'll get over it, but sliding this district my way would sure speed up the process. Whoever you...
And I feel he only needed to be like that in order for the tension of the sit-downs and the assigning of territories to work between Lincoln and his 3 lieutenants. But that is just ruining my headcanon of Vito after 2. But now, some real problems with the game that I feel everyone would agree with. At least they better, because I'm always right. Something the previous games did very well was the passing of time. Obviously they can do this a lot easier due to its heavy linear layout. Like, think of everything Tommy Angelo did in Mafia 1. He was a cabbie, then he slowly rose his way up the ranks of the Salieri crime family, until he robs a bank and having to face down a capo within the crime family and one of his previous best friends. And then of course he goes to a police detective, and rats on the Don, putting him in prison. This story takes place over 8 years. Vito, kind of the same. He served in World War II, got released from the service due to a medical injury that of course was because his friend helped him get out of it. Started working for one crime family in an attempt to not leave his family the way his father did and get them out of the debt that his father left them. Doing low-level jobs for that crime family and then being set up as a fall guy, and then he went to prison for a while. Actually served time in prison, and then got out and joined another crime family, taking out his previous crime family for doing some shady shit. At least by Mafia / the Commission standards. And then he starts doing some shady shit by the Commission standards, selling drugs, as he was found out by the families and given an ultimatum and an order to kill his current Don. That also took place over 8 years. Now, then there is Mr. Lincoln Clay, who robbed a Federal Reserve, was shot in the head, his adopted family was killed, he recovered from the headshot when he was in a coma for an unknown amount of time, met up with his contact and friend from the CIA, where he proceeded to take down every single racket of the crime family of the man who shot him, killing all their underlings, completely taking over the city of New Bordeaux, whilst also doing some side work to keep his lieutenants happy, and then killing the head of the Marcano crime family, which, what time frame did Lincoln do this all in? You know, he did a lot more than the previous protagonists. You guessed it, it also took 8 years, like all the other games. Oh, wait. No, it didn't. He did it all within the same calendar year of 1968. And he was in that coma for an unknown amount of time, but listen, I'm not a doctor. I work retail, I'm stupid, I get that. But I imagine if you are shot point blank, almost point blank, in the skull, the coma you go into after that, whilst your life is being saved, I'm going to say it's probably more than, if not around 4 months. So that's like 4 months in 1968 he couldn't have been taking down the crime family. Now, once again, it doesn't say how long he was in the coma for. This is just like some stuff I read on Reddit. He was shot in February as Mardi Gras was happening at that time. And with other current events that happened around that time, like the killing of Martin Luther King, he would have had to woken up around June. So yeah, he took down a whole criminal empire in under 7 months, which is stupid. And it's probably the problem with the fact that the game went for a much more open story, open world style. Now, I'm not going to say Ubisoft style, because I don't actually think it was. It had the same collectibles as previous games, that being Playboys. So it wasn't that, it's just that it's much harder to show the passing of time in an open world than it is a chapter-based format of the previous games. And I also just love the idea personally of after a day of crime, you return home and go to sleep at the end of the day. There's just something cool about having to sleep in video games, and not just because you need to sleep, not like in Minecraft when you sleep so you don't get attacked by flying demon bat things. But anyways, now on to the biggest problem with this game, and the thing that made it one of the hardest games I have tried to complete for the channel. Not in terms of difficulty, the game's pretty easy difficulty wise. More the pain of sitting there and doing the same thing over and over again.
Repeat stuff, 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 yeah. Repeat
spare some of your crew to hold tick for?
I know just the boys for the job.
As I mentioned, Lincoln takes down all of the Marcano's underlings. And that, where in this game, has the problem of doing the same things over and over again. So, in order to take over the city, you have to kill Marcano's captains and capos. Captain and capo means the same thing, ignore that. And in order to do that, you need to take over all of their rackets in their district. And in order to take over all of the rackets, you need to cause a certain amount of monetary value of damage to the racket. And there are 2 rackets per district and 9 districts Lincoln needs to take over to finish the story.
I have to finish the story.
And yes, the rackets are all different, but that doesn't really matter, as they are all taken down by the same rotation of 3 monetary attack activities, that being attacking a warehouse and destroying or stealing product, or killing someone. And then there is the rare different activity where you attack a warehouse and then find the location of one of their storage yards, and then driving somewhere else to get the product to then destroy it or deliver it to your own rackets. And would you guess that all of our storage yards just so happen to be in the bayou? And well, you could have guessed. The bayou is very fucking far away from anything else. And every racket starts with the person who's helping you bring down the racket saying the leader of the racket doesn't come out unless he needs to fix a serious problem.
Who's running things over there?
Nutjob by the name of Sonny Blue. Lets a room out to the butcher's loan sharks. Protection guys too. If they can't do it there, they put the hurt to people in the street.
Any chance Sonny's around the Robodo?
Fuck no. Sonny only comes around to scare his people into shape.
And no one can find where he is until he comes out to fix that problem. And you guessed it, the district leader only comes out if he needs to fix something with his rackets. And oh my god, the amount of times someone said to me, the boss doesn't come around unless blah blah blah, it almost made me quit. The only reason I didn't is because of the story. Of course, I like stories. I think I've said that a lot at this point. I would even say that this game has one of the better stories out of all the Mafia games. To the point where I'm sure, as I mentioned before, you have seen TikToks of this game's story. Most likely of John Donovan in front of a congressional meeting about his and Lincoln Clay's activities in 1968. Which reminds me to mention, the game is told in a form of documentary style, being made sometime in the 2000s. Which is also a nice addition, as every Mafia story has been told in some form of special way. If it's Tommy Angelo's life being described as he retails it to a detective for an interview, the one that would eventually put Salieri away. And Vito being either Vito's writing of a book or writing in his journal. But that's enough pretext. Let's take a quick look at what happened during this game's narrative. And let's make it a lot quicker than the game did, because you've already been here long enough, but I thank you for getting to this point. Alright, so the game opens up jumping between 2 times, probably weeks if not only days apart from each other. With the first one being Lincoln returning from his time serving in the Vietnam War, getting picked up by his adopted brother Ellis, who gives him the laydown on what's going on around his father Sammy's problems with a Haitian gang. And of course dropping some stuff just for the time, like how they're getting into drugs and they don't want J. Edgar Hoover up their arse. Oh, and Sammy is a leader of the black mob working out of his bar in the Hollow. Where this part of the opening ends with Lincoln attacking the Haitians who are causing Sammy problems, killing most of them. The other opening of the game, and what you actually start at the first time you take control of Lincoln, is Lincoln and Georgie Marcano, the son of Sal, driving a stolen armoured truck to the Federal Reserve, and using uniforms to make their way into the basement, along with the cover that they have a bunch of money, uncirculated currency if it's damaged or some reason, that they are taking to be burned. Using this cover to rob the place by taking out the team guarding the vault, and as they start stuffing their bags with money, the alarm gets set off. Luckily, they had a team in the sewers below drilling a hole for the team to escape, which after a bit of a standout, they make their way into the sewers. That team waiting for them in the sewers being Ellis, of course Lincoln's adopted brother, and Danny Burke, an Irish wannabe race car driver and friend of the gang. After a bit of a run-in with the law, where they fought the law and well, they won.
I'm robbing people with a 6-gun.
I fought the law, and the law can kiss my ass.
I fought the law and the law lost.
All regrouping at Sammy's bar, apart from Georgie, who was separated, but we'll meet them there when he can. As he shows up after the group have already got some drinks in them with his dad Sal Marcano. And after a little bit more drinking, the Marcanos attack and kill everyone in the bar apart from Lincoln, who survives a point-blank shot in the head by one Georgie Marcano, but survived and got out of the bar, which was also set alight by the Marcanos, with the help of Father James, a priest who has been a part of Lincoln's life ever since he was in the church's orphanage, as of course we do not know what happened to his original father and mother. After awakening in the church after being in a coma from the bullet in his head, Lincoln then reaches out to John Donovan, a CIA agent who he worked with in Nam, and they set up a plan to take everything from Sal Marcano, just like he took everything from Lincoln. And then there is the middle part of the game, which is just Lincoln going around taking out all the rackets. As I previously mentioned, this part of the game is just
Repeat stuff, 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 repeat stuff.
But before being able to take over the rackets, Lincoln needs to recruit some lieutenants to watch over his districts while he's taking out the next one. The first of those being Cassandra, who was the leader of the Haitian mob, who Lincoln let go when he attacked them for Sammy, as she was smart and fought on her feet and acted like she was a hostage of the proposed leader of the Haitian mobs. The second lieutenant being one Thomas Burke, the father of Danny, who died in the attack at Sammy's bar. Of course, Thomas Burke being a typical Irish alcoholic, and he also is just cancer ridden at this point. Not that we know that at this point, but the man got some cancer and is not going to have the best life. So he will do anything he can to revenge his son before he eventually bites the dust. And then there is the one and only world famous mafioso Vito Scaletta, who also got screwed over by Sal in the reserve heist, as it was his money that was provided as a cover, the money that we were burning as uncirculated currency, and he never got his share of the money. However, Marcano is unable to kill Vito Scaletta as he is a made man, and he would have to go and ask the commission, which is run by Leo Galante, and Leo and Lincoln are like friends, kind of. I mean, Leo would have probably been the one who sent him to New Bordeaux, where he was sent away from his sister. Or did his sister, did Francesca die? I don't remember. Anyways, not important. Let's move on. So, Lincoln and his ragtag crime family make up the Clay crime family, which I don't think is ever referred to as that in the game, but it uses it on the wiki, so I'm just gonna probably call them either the gang or the Clay crime family. As Lincoln goes around town taking districts and assigning them to his underlings, needing to keep everyone happy in order to avoid bad outcomes. But you also choose how you divvy up the districts. Like, if you really wanted to, and what I probably would have done if I completed the game when I first played it, I would have just given all the districts to Vito and gone screw the rest of them. I don't know Thomas Burke, I don't know Cassandra, I know Vito though, but that's just me. But this time around I decided to divide the districts evenly. Apart from recruiting your lieutenants, there is not much real story you get to experience in the middle of the game. There are little tidbits you learn whilst taking out the Marcano crime family, but I will cover those when I cover the end game of the story. And then after you take over every district, you get a cutscene that plays, and it's either footage of a trial that John Donovan was in or a congressional hearing, which took place after the events of the game, but before the making of the documentary, which is the other cutscenes that you'll see. It's Father James being interviewed for a documentary on Lincoln Clay. So, by the end of the story, Lincoln has learned what Sal is up to, as it turns out they robbed the Federal Reserve to get money printing plates, which is how Georgie set off the alarm, as the plates were on a separate circuit to the main vault. Sal needing to print money in order to help fund a casino which he is building just outside of town. Now, he's not doing this to get out of a life of crime, but to get out from under the commission, which is why Sal will not ask the commission for money in any way, as he would then have to kick back a % of the casino's money to the commission, and he just quite frankly doesn't want to do that. And clearly he is willing to cross anyone to be able to get to that point. But after Lincoln removed all of his ways of making money, Sal and Georgie go to the half-built casino to make their final stand, as Lincoln arrives and wipes out all the men in his way, finally arriving at Georgie, the last line of defense before the elevator up to Sal's office. Taking out Georgie and heading up there and sitting down with Sal, having a talk about stuff, Sal and Lincoln both knowing that it's the end for Sal. After having a drink and talking about how Sal thinks that they are very similar in terms of the way they are, like they can't just have it, they have to, I'll show the cutscene, I don't exactly remember what.
I buried a lot of people, more than I can count. The one I never wanted to see go down in that cold ground was my son.
And yet here we are.
Yes, sir. Here we are. My son is dead, and I'm having a drink with his killer. I'm not gonna apologize for what I did, you understand? If I did, I'd just be lying. I don't have it in me to feel shame for the things I've done to others. Never have.
Didn't come here for an apology.
Nah. I know you did. Goddamn, I was right about you, wasn't I? I knew it the second I fucking saw you at the country club. Men like us, we're just wired up wrong. There's only one thing we know. One thing we're good at. I'm gonna be waiting for you, Lincoln Clay. This won't be the last time we see each other.
I know.
He said, but it's a bunch of BS if you ask me. But then Lincoln is given a choice to kill Sal or leave him, which is what I did. My thinking means Sal left Lincoln with no family, no house to live in, no friends. So Lincoln will do the same, walking away from Sal when he decides to shoot himself in the head, killing the last member of the Marcano crime family with that bullet. Whilst leaving the casino, Lincoln meets up with Leo, waiting for him as he leaves. This is also the first time that we will see Leo in the game. Talking to him about what is next for the city, and that he's okay that Lincoln does anything he wants, drugs, prostitution, anything he wants to do, as long as Leo gets his cut. But Lincoln is unsure if he wants to stay in New Bordeaux, having a multiple choice ending for the game, Lincoln staying or Lincoln leaving. with some sub-outcomes for each. If Lincoln stays and chooses to rule with his boys, the lieutenants,
Why don't we go back to my place and play house? You be the door and I'll slam it.
Lincoln will proceed to spread out across much of the South, becoming the city's favourite son, giving money to all the right people to stay in power, donating to schools, but also giving in to every vice you can think of. Drugs, guns, sex, all of it. And then there is Lincoln chooses to stay, but also choosing to kill Vito, Thomas and Cassandra. But it turns out, if you decide that ending, someone else had the same idea, setting up a car bomb under Lincoln's car as he goes to leave after killing everyone. The bomb setting alight and blowing up the car. Shockingly as well, it was Father James who set up the bomb, not being able to let Lincoln become the next Sal Marcano, seeing the monster that he had become and stopping it in its tracks. And then there is Lincoln leaving, which is what I went for, but there are 3 different outcomes, with a different member of the Clay crime family taking over. First is Vito, this being the one I wish I got, but I did not. We'll get to that one later. Vito does what Sal was unable to do, finishing Sal's casino and taking over the whole city with new developments popping up all around New Bordeaux. Vito building multiple casinos and hotels and everything you could think of. Vito still being alive at the time of the documentary's release, which I don't know how realistic that is timelines. Kenny was like in his mid-20s, in the 40s. He'd probably be very old in the early 2000s. But anyways, Vito's still living in the penthouse at the casino, looking over the Vegas of the South, as it's termed after Vito's work there. And then there is Thomas Burke taking over, who uses the money that the Clay family had accumulated from taking out the Marcanos to go down to Mexico in order to get a black market kidney transplant to cure his cancer. And then he would proceed to use his moonshining routes to deal drugs and guns and everything else until he pissed off the Colombians and ended up dead. The city becoming a bit of a lawless paradise after Burke's death, with no one being able to take control for more of a couple months at a time. Lastly, the one I got, which might be the worst of all the outcomes, that being Cassandra taking over. Every other gang or crime family or anything in the area would not recognize her claim and attempt to take over, but she ended up killing them in increasingly violent ways, until the governor went after her, so she shot him in the head in front of the Capitol building. The city was now hers, but the government, being the fickle little government it is, and also, why wouldn't they pulled all the money out of the city, from schools to trash pickup and everything in between. And then there was a massive hurricane that hit, wiping out all of the levees and causing severe flooding within the city. The hurricane nicknamed Hurricane Cassandra, with Cassandra's location or status unknown, with claims that she still pops up now and then from the bayou. The city, however, was left in a rotting state with no one living there, and the government had still just left it after the hurricane, a completely rotten to the core abandoned major US city. Now, the reason I am mad about getting this outcome, there are some cutscenes with Father James where he's walking around the old site of Sammy's bar or at his church, and the city looks completely fine. So in my mind, I somehow got the least canon outcome of all the endings, which is not very pog. But during all of these underlings taking over the city, Lincoln Clay is nowhere to be found. He has been spotted all around the world travelling around as a nomad, sending Father James the occasional postcard every so often. He's been to California, he worked with some Colombians, he even returned to Vietnam. But that's the end of the Mafia 3 story, a pretty good story hidden behind a wall of repetitive shit. And I really do like the story a lot, as I have mentioned. I think it might be the best Mafia story so far, unfortunately accompanied by the worst gameplay. With my only real problem with the story being the ending I got and how I just mentioned how it doesn't work out in terms of what the game shows you. But this video is plenty long enough, so I'm just going to end this by saying I love the Mafia series. I like the game a lot more than I thought I would, but it's still not a great game by any chance, and I hope that Mafia the Old Country can take some of the notes from this game's story and the other game's more linear approach, chapter approach. I would love if it still has chapters, that'd be great. And I will hopefully see you in the Old Country. And if you are for some reason still watching at this point, I think I have earned a like on the video and maybe even a subscription if you think I have indeed earned it. Anyways, I have been Jack, this has been Mafia 3, I'm out, peace.
Senator! Where were you when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated?
I don't remember. At home, I believe.
I don't remember. At home, I believe. Let me tell you where I was. A muddy hut in Vietnam. Slowly dismembering an old woman, cutting her apart bit by bit. And do you know why? Because her son was an NVA officer. And hurting her was the only way to make him talk.
I don't understand what this has to do
What he
with
told us saved the lives of an entire platoon. That's 42 men. Men that lived another day because I was willing to take a saw to that old woman.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I believe that...
Sit down and shut the fuck up! I did a lot of terrible shit over there. In the name of this country. Shit that will haunt me for the rest of my life. But I did it because I believed in the fight. I believed what this nation stood for. So, to be sitting there ass deep in mud with that old woman scattered all around me, and hearing that the President of the United States had just been fucking murdered, well, I knew right then and there that I couldn't let that stand. That I would find a way to make it right no matter how long it took.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that Sal Marcano and a group of conspirators murdered Jack Kennedy.
Oh, that is the most absurd thing I have ever heard.
I assumed you would say that. Don't fucking move!
This... You're out of your mind.
Oh, I don't hold anyone's ambitions against them, Senator. And you certainly were ambitious, weren't you? You went to law school, and then you became a district attorney, and then United States Senate. After Sal Marcano died, I went through his files. Imagine my surprise when I saw your name over and over and over and over again. The mob wanted Jack Kennedy dead, and you were more than willing to help.
There are cameras everywhere. There's witnesses.
No, I want
You'll
them
never
to
get
see
away
that,
with
you
this.
stupid asshole, because then they will know that I am not finishing with you. I am starting with you. Oh! Oh! And they're next. Gentlemen,